how much alcohol have you had to not feel this. I have to restrain myself at parties from not talking about serial killers. I love all humour in the UK, so I'm like, I'm down to clown. You're so nice, but I have no idea what you're saying. I'm not strong enough for this northern cold. Don't be pushed around by the north and the south. It's very confusing. Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, I am Yvette and I moved to the UK in May last year and I'm coming up on 1 year soon. And I'm documenting my experiences. So, firstly, terribly sorry for all of this because I was at a 1920s Gatsby party last night, which was so fun and amazing, but I'm, you know, an old lady, so I don't go out, so I'm feeling it today. And I woke up literally an hour ago and I've half-assedly straightened a bit of my hair so you can't tell because it was all curly for last night. And we're gonna push on and I'm gonna get you guys a video because I am committed, because trust me, all I want to do is lay right back there and watch some Netflix. But firstly, this Gatsby party, it was amazing. A friend recommended to go and it was £15. It was in this old theatre in East London that was from the 20s, so it was all that Gatsby style like geometric stuff. And then they had like cabaret, they had dances, they had acrobatics, they had aerial gymnastics, and I'm like, I need to stretch more. And they had everyone, you had to dress up, so everyone looked amazing and the band was amazing. The girl was such a good singer. She sounded like Christina Aguilera, but all that stuff and more is over on my stories. So before I jump into everything, I often do lots of bits and pieces. Like this week's been quite busy of fun things in that I went to a filming of the Russell Howard show, who's a comedian, did the Gatsby thing, and then I also went up to Lincoln, which a lot of you guys saw on my Instagram, and gave me a lot of recommendations, which is good. I was thinking of doing like a weekly vlog, so rather than doing like one day, do like a week in London, or my life in a week in London, or something like that, because I do so many random things throughout the week of like fun bits and bobs that I find going on. So tell me if that's something you'd be interested in having a peek into my day-to-day life rather than just this corner of my flat. But yeah, anyways, without further ado, I will jump into the video. One thing people don't really realise until they move to the UK is that there is a very distinct divide between the north and the south. So with that divide comes a few different stereotypes, cultural things, expectations, even like language and accent change drastically between the north and the south. So I thought it'd be funny to go through some of the stereotypes and then tell you what my experience is for that. So I would say I'm fairly impartial. I know I live in the south, but like I've only been here a few months. And I've been to the north surprisingly an amount of time. So I know Scotland, it's normally the north of England, but Scotland has a lot of correlation with the stereotypes of the north. So I wouldn't say it is, but it isn't like completely different. Point of the story is my sister-in-law lives in Scotland, so I'm always up driving to Scotland, so I'm always going through the north. And my manager lives in Manchester, so all my regional and monthly meetings are always in Manchester. So I'm always going to Macclesfield or Manchester or Walsall, which is, you know, debatably the north. But we'll get into that. So I have had a good exposure to both, so I think I can have some say on my interpretation, but I'm no expert. I haven't lived there, obviously, but we'll see how we go. Firstly, before I even get into the stereotypes, what I think is interesting is that no one knows where the north starts. I've talked to a few people trying to like research this video and no one knows. Sometimes it's like the second you leave the M25, everything else is north. But that doesn't make sense for the south. And then some people say it's like Manchester is where it starts, and some people say Birmingham is where it starts. And then like there's this whole concept of the Midlands, but no one knows what that is. No one knows anything about where that starts. So I'm not sure if that's Birmingham maybe, or Liverpool. No, Liverpool's near Manchester. So who knows? It seems to be, I feel really bad for the Midlands because I feel like the north say the Midlands is south and the south say the Midlands is north. It's like no one wants the Midlands, which is so sad. I'm like, I'll have you Midlands, come on. Fight for your right, come on. Don't be pushed around by the north and the south. One of the main differences you hear about the north and the south is that the north is friendlier, which isn't completely wrong. I think the south is a lot nicer and friendlier than people realize or give it credit for. But that said, the North is nicer in that you can go in and have a conversation with someone, whereas like no one will have a conversation in London, but they will be like polite and like manners and like let you cross the road, or like the driving. I know people say the driving is nuts, but to me the driving is much more civilized and polite than Sydney. So I haven't actually ever driven up north actually. I always catch the train, so I can't comment on the driving up there, but yeah, so I will say Wales, which I know is a whole different country, not England, but they're the friendliest people I've ever met, hands down. Northerners are tough but friendly, like, so they'll insult you but then help you. You know what I mean? It's great. So like insult in like a jovial, you know, nudging kind of way, like a bants, not like an aggressive, you know. But yeah, so the North is friendlier. I think it's more of like, yeah, more conversationally, like it's going to be easy if you're moving to the UK. I think it'd be easier to make friends if you're in the North than in the South, because everyone does keep to themselves. They're polite, but there's definitely a wall, but there's no like a wall, like a wall goes up when you're talking to someone, that it's very like transactional. But in the North there's no wall. The other stereotype is that the Northerners can drink a lot, which I'm not going to argue with. I personally am not a very big drinker. Like I drink, but like I can't, I'm such a slow drinker. It takes me like an hour to finish one glass, like maybe. So yeah, I'm not one to say like to get smashed or get drunk pretty fast or easy. So I would say probably true. However, I think the South tends to have a lot of foreigners who are ruining the average. So I don't know if that corrupts the experiment, but I can't personally say that that's not true, so there you go. Northerners have a better work-life balance than Londoners, which yes and no, I'd say. It's interesting with that one. So they would have, I think statistically, they spend they spend less time in the office because obviously London has quite demanding work hours, so you can do like 70 hours, particularly if you're like in the banking sector or something. Just because there's one, the weather, which we'll get onto, and two, a bit less happening than say London. When you do have free time, you probably spend it more at home than you would out, whereas Londoners will spend it out. So it's quality versus quantity, I would say, argument. So the North definitely has way more free time because of the more relaxed work environment, whereas the South has better quality because you have less time, but when you do, it's like you're going to a museum, you're going to a Gatsby party, you're going to a filming of something, you know, there's always something happening. So you don't actually spend all that much time at home between work and stuff. And in the summer, it's like you spend all your time in the parks because the weather's so nice. So you're never home in London. So I pay an exorbitant amount of money for rent for an apartment. Northerners can go home after work before going out, which this leads to me my whole other debate, because I've been living in this flat almost a year. So like we're looking at like, do we want to stay? Do we want to move somewhere else? Blah, blah, blah. Looking at all the different options. And the attitudes in London confuse me so much. So it's like, unless you're in zone 1, you're not in London. I was talking to a customer and she was like, oh, give me a recommendation of someone in London. And I was recommending someone in Camden. And she was like, no, London. And so I was recommending someone in like Shoreditch, and she's like, no, London. And I'm like, these are London, what are you talking about? But she wanted like central London, like zone 1, and that's considered London, and then everything else is like further away. But then you have places like Weybridge or Suburbiton or Teddington, Twickenham, which you get to the city or to London in 20 minutes, but there's no tube, so it's not considered London. And then also it's in a different borough, but it's also inside the M25, so it's in Greater London. It's very confusing. So I don't know how to answer this question, because like realistically, I don't know how many people live in zone 1. I don't know anyone that lives in zone 1. It's too expensive, and it's all businesses. So everyone lives outside of London. So, but how far out do people live to commute in? Because if you lived in Weybridge or something, you wouldn't go all the way home to go out again. That I understand. So where Northerners would have the advantage. But if you lived where I live now, I could go home and go out because I live relatively close to the city, or I'm well connected. So I don't know. This question confuses me purely because London confuses me. I can't. So yeah, I'll give it to the Northerners because London's too messy to get a point. Northerners have a lot more space around them. This I'm going to disagree with. I know, controversial, because One thing I think a lot of the UK gets annoyed about, right, is that all of the UK is London. You know, you say, oh, I'm from England, they assume you're from London, or you say I'm British, so people assume you're from London, even though you might even be like Northern Irish or Scottish or Welsh or not even English, and people get quite annoyed at that. I would say it goes the other way too, so the north-south divide, like there's London, no doubt, I live here, blah blah blah. But there's other like there's Kent, there's Sussex, there's Surrey, there's all these other, even Cornwall, there's all these other counties, as you saw in my last video. I'm expert at the counties, which aren't London. So to say the north has more space, which it does have beautiful, like the Lakes District, the Peaks District, I'm not saying it's not lovely, but I'm just saying if you go down like south of London, not South London, you get like Surrey Hills and like lots of nice hikes and like heaps of greenery, which having no greenery, no space, I think is more synonymous with London than it is the south. So I don't think that's a fair assumption, because the south has some really beautiful national parks and stuff, and I really want to go check them out. And like, yeah, it's just there's so much space and loveliness all down south, just not in London. So I think that gets more equated to London. Anything outside of a city, I would say, has a lot of green space. I will say, I loved Lincoln, by the way. I don't know if I said that at the start, which is, it's a beautiful little city, which you guys corrected me on. I took my dog up because I was like, road trip, let's go. And we just explored the village and that with the dog, which was great. But I was trying to find grass for her to go to the bathroom. I had bags and stuff, don't come for me. I bring, you know, I'm a responsible dog owner. I had my bags, I was ready, I was like waiting for her to go to the toilet. And I had to walk so far outside of Lincoln to find a green space, which makes me appreciate London being so built up. It does have pockets of grass, you know what I mean? So I could always find something for her. But yeah, I struggled in Lincoln. I was like walking around, it was like -1 degree, and I'm like, I'm not strong enough for this northern cold. I'm so weak. Send me back to the south. Speaking of which, the northerners are harder. Northerners are known to be a bit more rough, stronger, more durable, more, I don't know, resilient, I guess. And I think if you live in those weather conditions up north, you have to be. It's so cold, and like it rains more up there, and I don't know, to be fair, I don't know why that equates to them personality being like much tougher, and like they're known to be like much more handyman and like can hold themselves and don't complain. They just kind of get on with it, you know, they get the job done, get in, get it done, get out, no complaints, you know. Kind of to be honest, the attitude's kind of a bit Australian, if you ask me. Not me, because I left, but the country is like, you know, fair dinkum, get in, get it done, don't have a whinge. Another stereotype for the north is that you guys are a bit more handy, shall I say, so you do a bit more hands-on work, whereas the southern is more likely to be a bit more white collar, I guess, like banking and business and all that. So a fun thing in Australia, if you're a tradesman, so you know, plumber, electrician, that kind of thing, we call them tradies, and they're generally a bit more like better looking because they're a bit buffer, because they're working outside, or with their like they're physically moving rather than sitting at a desk, so they're a bit more in shape. So we always call, there's a saying that says tradies get the ladies, so I call them tradies. But I think there's tradies up north, I think there's tradies down south, there's bankers up north and there's bankers down south. I think it's a bit of a weird stereotype, but I guess it's like more synonymous, because if you, even in London, if you call an electrician or a plumber, you'll probably get a northerner. So there you go. But that's a weird one I thought I saw come up. My next point is that northerners are harder because of the weather, which I totally agree with, because the weather up north is crazy. It's like the stereotype of the bad weather in the UK comes from the north, I suspect, because it is quite cold a lot of the year and it is raining a lot compared to the south. London's not too bad because that pollution kind of like keeps it in. The north, it's like, oh, I couldn't do it, you guys are much stronger than I am. And I go up to the north a lot because of my sister-in-law and my work and that, and you still see people out on hen do's in like tiny skimpy dresses, and I'm like, how are you doing this? Oh my god, you're so much braver than I am. I can't even look at you without being cold. Like, how are you doing this? if I'd be like planning a hen party in Edinburgh, I'd be like, woo, the theme is après ski, everyone put your ski gear on. Like, I can't, you guys are so strong. I'm like, how much alcohol have you had to not feel this? I'm so impressed. Definitely that, although one thing I want to point out, just interestingly, I'm filming this on a Sunday. There's currently a weather warning for this Sunday because of Storm Sierra, I think it is. Anyways, so it's quite windy. I woke up this morning, went on my social media, and I have a bunch of like videos and photos from Australia of like all of the mass flooding they're having now. So they were on fire a month ago, now everything's underwater. My friend had to wade through his car park to get to his car. The parks are all just like look like little ponds now. It's completely flooded and causing a lot of damage to like trees down and all that jazz. And then I look outside here and I'm like, it's a weather warning and the parks are closed because it's a bit windy. And Australia doesn't have a weather warning on, so I just think it's, so when I say, oh, the UK has good weather, that's what I'm used to. Like, good weather is like extreme in Australia. Like, I just want some nice, predictable, nothing major. I've never seen a tree go down anywhere I live, and I live somewhere quite high altitude, so I'm so happy. It's just like such a weird juxtaposition to be like in this like mild storm, if that, and they're like, weather warning, and then Australia's like underwater and they're like, I still expect you to go to work. You're like, whoa. Another major difference of the north and the south is the price of things. So it's much cheaper up north. I was at a Christmas market in Manchester when I went up for work, and they were selling Christmas ornaments for £1. And I was like, what? They're like at least £10, at least in London Christmas markets, if that, if not more. So I was like so blown away, and like price of food and drinks always so cheap. Housing is much cheaper. For what you can get, a 1-bedroom flat in London is like a 3-bedroom house up north. Dan and I joked that we would take the money that we were going to buy our family home with, which isn't not for many years, and instead of buying what we would buy in London, we'll buy it in the north and just buy like this like Kensington Palace style building, like this massive old heritage listed mansion, because like that's the same money. Jokes aside, don't know if I could handle the north. I'm not tough enough, but I'm so jealous of your currency because man, London's so expensive. My favorite difference of the north and the south is the comedy. So I love British comedy. I was thinking of doing a video on the UK versus Australian versus US comedy / sense of humor, but I found with even in the UK there's such a difference. So in the north they're a bit more loud, a bit more like way more likely to be self-deprecating and poke fun at themselves, and whereas the south is much more like sarcastic and witty and more likely to put other people down. And then there's the humor. So I thought that was quite an interesting like distinction. I love all humor in the UK, so I'm like, I'm down to clown, so like no big deal, but I just thought it was an interesting differentiation. So tell me if you're interested in the humor video, the comedy UK versus US. I'm going to make a like tiny point is the accents. We all know accents up north are fun, and they're much different to the south. I just want to say this one time I got into a taxi in Newcastle, and I could not for the life of me understand what the guy was saying. And I travel, like I know things, like but oh, he was so strong, and I was like, you're so nice, but I have no idea what you're saying. Yeah, the northern accent is much more fun, strong. I think when you think of a British accent, you tend to think of a southern accent. So I think the northern accents are much underrated, despite their variations, because like Leeds or Yorkshire, love a Yorkshire accent. My last point is the food. I went to Jack Whitehall, who was like the most stereotypical like southern boy, and he was talking about all the different milks in London. So if you go to a cafe in London, they'll be like, what milk do you want? And you can have oat, almond, soy, macadamia, avocado, whatever else. There's 1,000 different milk types, which makes it quite easy for me, a health wanker, to have the pick of the litter of what I would like. If you get a coffee up north and you say, what are the milk options? They'll say hot or cold. So not a lot of options for like people avoiding dairy. Also, I've been to so many Holiday Inns and Hiltons, and I've gone to the buffet for meetings, and I've gone to the buffet for lunch, and the vegan veggie option is like just steamed vegetables, and I'm like, this is disgusting. I'm like the worst veggie because I don't like vegetables. I need them to like, you know, be seasoned and cooked. It's like if you went up to a buffet and they were just like, here, we boiled some chicken for you. And you'd be like, well, that's not nice. Where's some sauce with it or some seasoning? So, however, the North for food, if you were drunk or hungover, much like me today, and you want like the most disgustingly amazing food, the North has got you back. You want gravy and chips, chips and curry, chips buddy with gravy. I just love chips and I love carbs. I love bread. And they even, Scotland does the deep fried Mars bar. So like awful for you food, but amazingly tasting food, the North has got you back. But if you want health wanker food, the South has got you back. So depends on your mood. But that's what I like about the UK, is that it's so diverse. My last point is that the Northerners are generally a bit more sporty than the Southerners, probably because of Manchester United, probably a huge part of it. But my overall point is that I think the North of England is a bit more similar to Australian culture than the South. The North is good because if I ever want to feel like I want to go home to Australia, I'll just go north. It's great. But that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I love the fact that I can live in the UK and be like 20 kilometers away from somewhere and it can be a completely different culture and attitude. It's amazing. You can drive for 2 hours and feel like you're in a different country. Amazing. My shout out of the week is Ryan. Thank you so much for watching, Ryan. I see you like crime documentaries. You're after my heart. I love a crime documentary. Tell me who you think killed John Benet Ramsey and then I can decide if we're going to be friends, because I have strong opinions on the case. If you don't know that about me, I'm a huge crime documentary fan. I love all things crime. I have to restrain myself at parties from not talking about serial killers and ways they killed people, because that's a really fun way to alienate yourself at a party. So thank you so much for watching, Ryan. If you would like to be my shout out of the week, make sure you share this video on any of your social media and just make sure you tag me so I can see it. And tell me in the comments below if you're a Northerner or a Southerner. I know I have a lot of UK people watching, but I want to know where you're based. Tell me, if you don't mind, like no pressure. Tell me where you are in the UK and if you consider that North or South, because the divide is so contested. You know what I mean? If you're like, I live in Birmingham, but I consider that the North or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Tell me that in the comments, because I'd find that really interesting. And remember to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and remember to hit subscribe so I can see you next time.